I thought everyone should think like me until I realized that I'm the problem. I want to talk about something that honestly made me a little uncomfortable to admit. Now, about a week ago, I had a realization about people that completely changed my perspective on life. Now, it's not because I suddenly just got smarter. I started to realize that I made an assumption on life that I didn't even notice until now. I think that I subconsciously expected everyone to think the exact same way I do. Now, before you click off, I don't mean that everybody should have the same opinions as me. That's expected. I mean that I expected people to process information, curiosity, conversation, conflict, and their own emotions similar to how I do. Craziest part is I never even realized I was doing this. Now, the weirdest part is I actually would consider myself someone who is completely open minded. I love psychology, I love to learn human behavior, and I really love hearing other people's perspectives. So, how is it that someone who could value different perspectives in the same sentence say that they thought everyone thought like them, right? And that's what confused me as well. But then I realized something pretty important. Being open minded doesn't automatically make you unaware of your own default assumptions. Sometimes the biggest blind spots are the ones that feel completely normal. For example, have you ever been explaining something to someone and in your mind you're thinking, why aren't they asking more questions? Or maybe you've been so excited to share something to someone and their only response they could give you is, oh, that's cool. Meanwhile, you're sitting there trying to talk about it for the next few hours. I started to think maybe they're just not curious. But now I think that my perspective has changed and maybe they still are, but just in different ways. Maybe they don't explore ideas by asking questions. Maybe they process the information internally. Maybe they just need time to understand what you're even saying to them. Or maybe they're focused on something entirely different than I am. And none of these things make the other person wrong, they're just different. Now, this is where it started getting really real for me. Because it wasn't just in any conversation. I started noticing it in my own personal relationships. Now, there was a recent situation about this, and I'm gonna call my friend Susie, okay? Just for the sake of this video. Now, in this specific situation, I remember feeling like she was being really selfish. And in my head, I was thinking, I don't think she realized what she's doing. She needs to hear this, right? I tried to put a mirror in her face, in a respectful way as well. I was basically pointing out what she was doing wasn't matching what she was saying. To me, it felt like, well, isn't this obvious? Like, how do you not see this, right? To me, I thought I was helping her become more self aware. But if I'm being completely honest, if I'm looking back now, that wasn't just the only problem that I was trying to solve. I was expecting her to come to the same conclusion that I was coming to in my head. I thought if it was me in that situation that I would sit back and reflect and think about it and try to understand it. So I assumed that she would do the same, but she didn't. And I remember feeling extremely frustrated on it, like, why aren't you getting it? But then something clicked for me. Not everybody is ready to see themselves that way. Not everyone is willing to look at themselves that deeply, and not everybody learns just by being confronted. And this doesn't make anybody wrong, it just means we learn at different speeds. And since then, I've started to notice this everywhere, not just that one friendship, and multiple friendships, my own relationship, and even my family as well. Even online. I could hear people have the same conversation and come out of it interpreting it completely differently from each other. At first, I assumed that one of them had to be wrong, right? But now I think that everybody just sees their own reality in their own lenses. And it made me realize I think that we forget something that's very important. Everybody has their own internal worlds, meaning that they've all had different childhoods, different fears, different experiences, and different ways of solving problems and their own different values as well, different personalities, and different memories. And yet, we still expect them to come to the same conclusions as us. It's a little crazy if you think about it in that way. One thing I've been trying to practice telling myself lately is trying to ask a different question. Instead of asking why would someone think like that, I'm starting to try to ask what experiences would make that thought make sense. That tiny change has completely changed how I view people because now I'm not trying to win, I'm just trying to understand. And now here's another thing that was really difficult for me to understand. But just because somebody doesn't care or show care in the way you do doesn't automatically mean they care less. For a long time, I've unintentionally measured the way people care using my own perspective of care instead of thinking about them. If I asked 5 questions, I'm expecting 5 questions asked back to me. If I stay quiet and analyze, I expect the next person to do the same. If I express my emotions one way, I expected everyone else to do the same. But people don't all love the exact same way. They don't communicate the same way either. And nobody thinks the exact same way either. And I realized that having this expectation can create disappointment when they fail. So it's good to get rid of the expectations, no? Now, that does not excuse every single behavior. Some choices and behaviors are genuinely just awful. Boundaries still matter, communication still matters, and respect still matters at the end of the day. Understanding someone is not the same as excusing what they do. I think that what fascinates me most isn't just learning about other people, but it's realizing how little I understood my own assumptions. It's easier to notice other people's biases, it's a lot more difficult to understand your own. And mine wasn't believing I was always right, mine was assuming that the way I naturally think was way more universal than it actually is. Once I noticed it, I couldn't stop seeing it. And I think this is one of the reasons why I got so interested in learning about psychology. Because it's not just about learning facts, it's learning that your own mind is constantly making predictions, and sometimes they go unnoticed. Creating shortcuts, filling in the gaps, and sometimes those shortcuts work, and sometimes they don't. And the scariest part to me is that most of the time, we don't even realize it's happening. So now, I've been trying something completely different. Whenever I disagree with someone, before I explain why I think that they're wrong, I ask myself, what am I assuming right now? What evidence do I even have? And what if we're both actually making sense, but from just different starting points? And sometimes, even though it's hard, I have to ask myself, are they even ready to hear this? Because that's obviously something that I had to learn the hard way. Just because you see something in someone doesn't mean that they're ready to see it for themselves. And sometimes trying to force that realization will just create resistance anyway. And sometimes I started to realize that respecting people meant you had to let them grow at their own pace and not force them into it. And sometimes I still disagree with this as well. Sometimes I'll change my mind and still do it anyway. But either way, still leave the conversation understanding people a little better. So now, I don't think my goal is to make everyone think like me. I think my goal now is to become curious enough to understand why they don't. And it's making me realize that reality looks different to whoever you're listening to or talking to. Just because you think one way doesn't mean they're going to follow it. And that's okay too. And that realization has made me way more interested in discovering what I might still be wrong about. Alright, if you made it this far, I'd love to know your answer about this. Have you ever caught yourself assuming someone thinks the way you do? Or has someone else thought this about you? I think those conversations are where we learn the most. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it so much.